Thank you for joining us. This is the Designated Pundits, and today we are continuing on our 2026 Major League Soccer preview series by talking about the New England Revolution. And we continue this series with Greg Johnstone from Revolution Recap. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. I was mentioning you before the podcast. I did my favorite pre-podcast activity to get me in the mood, shoveling snow. It was a wonderful workout right after work and right before hopping on here. So I'm exhausted, but I'm ready to talk Revs, then go take a well-earned long sleep tonight.
Let's recap 2025. That'll really bring the life back into you, huh?
Absolutely. I love talking about the Caleb Porter era of the Revolution. Let's dive right in. I love it.
Scott, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Chances are I'm doing a bit better than Greg, and chances are after this next segment, I will still be doing a bit better than Greg.
Fair enough. Revolution 9-16 record, 11th in the East. They were eliminated from by Chicago Fire in the U.S. Open Cup round of 16. And if you look at how they ended up where they were, 44 goals scored was 11th in the East, but 51 goals against was 8th in the East. That -7 goal differential ended up being 12th in the East. So a little worse than average on offense, a little worse than average on defense, and that's why you missed the playoffs.
Yeah, that's about right. And, the context of going into last season, too, was that it was year 2 of the Caleb Porter. 2024 was a total disaster on both sides of the ball. They really brought in a handful of TAM players. They brought in Campana. They brought in their center back pairing of Ceballos and Fofana, which worked out pretty decently. They really tried strengthening the squad, and really last year was supposed to be kind of a win now mode, and they improved, but really the results across the board, not good enough. Still very sluggish on offense, as you can see. So yeah, a bit of a failure for 2025, and Caleb Porter is gone. Kurt Adolfo is still here. Some people feel Kurt Adolfo should be gone as well, but they are entering their new era and a new hope from hopefully these results are a thing of the past.
Marko Mitrovic is going to be the new coach of the team. Do you feel like there's a little bit of scapegoating there? I feel like this team kind of improved a lot over the course of the last year. Better.
Yeah, scapegoating on Porter. You mean was a scapegoat? The problem with Porter was that it was apparent there was some locker room friction, and I'll give a shout out to a guy who covers the team here locally, Caleb Pongratz of Pro Soccer. He had an article right after Porter was fired that he had a lot of tension in the locker room. Two guys that Porter brought in, Maxi Urruti and Luis Diaz, who were guys he played with before or had played for him before. There was some disciplinary issues, and they were released. He also had issues apparently with Thomas Shankalai. So there was a lot of kind of hubbub about the locker room and kind of friction with Porter. And so I don't think Porter was a scapegoat. I think he did a pretty poor job. And again, the context here was that 2024, 2025 weren't supposed to be rebuild years. At an MLS, it's more teams make the playoffs than not. So the last 2 years, I think you could say maybe he's a scapegoat in the sense that in 2024, he came in, it wasn't really his team. He didn't have much influence on the roster. They carried over like 27 or 28 players. And so maybe 2024 was like a little unfair to him that it wasn't really his team and he couldn't really put his fingerprints on it, but there was really no excuses for 2025. So I think the Caleb Porter experiment had to end.
Can I ask a quick question though? Yeah. Because from my view across on the other side of the country, the New England Revolution under a former coach who shall not be named.
Yes.
They were, if not title contenders, near title contenders. Then some drama happened. Caleb Porter didn't inherit some awful team. He inherited a team that was competing for stuff, right? So like as a coach, you come in, it's not like you're rebuilding a team. So I like to hear you talk about these aren't rebuilding years. Like from my perspective, Caleb Porter should have been able to just like hit the ground running. Do you think that's part of it?
Well, I think that's why he was partially hired. A guy who's won 2 MLS Cups, you're giving him a playoff team, a team that was in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. That was the expectation. He's supposed to come in and get running. Now, again, I'll play the Caleb Porter sympathizer card, which I don't like to do. And, that card is, he didn't have much influence on the roster. A lot of those guys probably still were upset about the Bruce scenario. There was a bit of a dark cloud. And I think you saw, Ian Harkes, Dave Romney, Mark Anthony Kay, a handful of players that were brought in under Bruce move out between 2024 and 2025. I think there was kind of an unsettled locker room feeling potentially in 2024. With all that being said, the results are the results. And I think everything you said there is also true. Caleb Porter wasn't brought in to do a rebuild. He wasn't brought in to miss the playoffs 2 years in a row, and he did. And I think, you don't win 2 MLS Cups on accident. Caleb, there's a good coach in there somewhere. He just didn't work in New England. And truthfully, last winter was the big spending window for the Revolution. And coming into this window, there's not a lot of turnover on the team. They've kind of used all the bullets in that gun. So for Caleb Porter, he'd be bringing back the same team, and I don't think the results would have gotten much better. So I think the Revs just ripped off the Band-Aid and needed to move on with a new coach.
Let's continue talking about 2025 because it wasn't all downhill. In fact, if you turn on the TV in the middle of April or May, you might have thought this team was headed for something. Started out poor, but had a really tough schedule. Lost to Columbus Crew and Philadelphia Union at home. Then they lost to NYCFC in NYCFC, turned it around against Red Bull, and then they went to win 6 of 7. And then I think even after they won 6 out of those 7, it was like 4 draws and another win. They hadn't lost between April 5th to June 14th. There was a little stretch of life there. However, only 4 wins in the last 25 games in all competitions. And I left the attendance numbers when teams are doing kind of poorly. I don't really have playoff stuff to talk about. The graphic gets a little tight. So I throw attendance numbers if I find them interesting. 24,477, 7th in the East. Still good numbers. People showing up to the soccer games.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting where those numbers come in next year. I believe that's still down from 2024. And the Caleb Porter was fired on the last day for season ticket holders to renew their tickets for the following season. So I'm curious if that had any impact, or if season ticket holders, if those numbers drop down a little bit. But attendance has been strong in New England. We've only finished above 5th place once in the Eastern Conference in the past decade, but attendance has steadily been going up and up and up and up. And not only that, but there's been an increased competition with RIFC. Hartford Athletic was founded in 2019. The Portland Hearts of Pine were founded last year. And now you have Boston Legacy of NWSL starting up next year. So soccer is growing in New England. It hasn't really impacted the Revolution's number. So it's one of the few things that they've had going for them, as well as a potential soccer stadium. I don't know if we're getting into that, but Everett is looking better and better as time goes on. So everything not on the field is going great. In terms of, though, that win streak back in April, May, Porter actually looked like he had kind of turned things around. He had shifted to a 5-man back line. He added Tanner Beast into the lineup. There was a bit of struggles out of their kind of base 4-2-3-1, and they shifted to a kind of a 5-3-2. And they were very defensively solid in that stretch. It looked like things were turning around. And then I think they went to an international break in the summer, and then it just all fell apart. Goals started pouring in and out. Ilya Sivacic had a really good first third of the season, and then kind of trailed off towards the end there. And the center back depth just wasn't there. So Fofana would miss a game, Ceballos would miss a game, and they're putting in Wyatt Omsberg or Keegan Hughes. And, if you're playing a 5-man back line and you're leaking goals, that's not a good sign either. So that dip in form, that defense just eventually cracked, and they couldn't match up offensively down the stretch.
Let's talk about offensive contributors. Carles Hill leading the way, I think, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. 10 goals, 9 assists. Continues to be one of the best attacking center mids in the league.
I love Carles Hill. Like,
hold on, I triggered something.
You did. You set off the brain. We think of guys like Ricky Puig and like how sweet he is on the ball and like how great he is to watch. And then you lose him for 2 seasons. People are like, oh, there's no one else like that. He's a great number 10. If Carles Hill was on any other team in Major League Soccer, he would be a household name. Like every time I watch him, like every season, I think like, oh yeah, he's dusted. Like, what does he have left? And then I watch and I'm like, wow, he's really good.
He's got a lot of class.
He'll go quiet for like a few games. Then you start seeing comments like he's over the hill. He's not going to regain his form. And then he'll have a game where it's almost always the same goal too, where he's on the right side. He kind of cuts in. He does kind of like a 2-touch thing with his left foot, and then he curls the ball perfectly into the far side corner. He can shoot from range. I mean, 10 goals. I mean, he's almost always in the top 2 or 3 in terms of key passes or breaking lines in MLS. And he's still leading a great, goal scorer. He converts from the penalty spot. He helps on set pieces. He's been kind of wasted on the Revolution outside of that 2021 year and that kind of brief run where things were clicking with Bruce Arena. Gil's been really wasted. So what's interesting about Carlos Gil is that he's in the last year of his guaranteed contract. There is a team option for 2027. So it's a little early to talk about what's going to happen contract wise, but we'll see. I mean, I'm sure a lot of teams out there might be interested in buying Carlos Gil if the season goes downhill and the Revs are sellers in the summer.
I just talked to Ted Meyer from RFK Refugees, and he's like, we have a good base, but we don't have a contributor. We don't have someone who's going to feed the ball to bring those goal totals up. And I really kind of think like Carlos Gil's like the reverse of that. Like you look at his numbers, he has 17 or 18 goal contributions just about every season. It could be double that if the characters around him were a little, better.
Yes.
And you look at that 9 assists and look at the goal scorers below him. Campana had an okay season, 7 goals, still not as what I think the Revolution hoped, but Thomas Shankali had injury problems and he didn't really work out. We traded him to Minnesota in what was essentially a salary dump. Feingold's a right back. Ganago did not work. He came in on loan from France and they declined his purchase option. Turgeman was a late add late in the year, so there's high hopes for him. I mean, that 3 goals is in 3 or 4 games, but Langoni, club record transfer, $9 million, only 2 goals last year. And there are some rumors too that some South American teams have been inquiring about him. So it's unclear if Langoni is a long-term piece for the Revolution. But if you look at what Carlos Gil is working with and the contributions there up and down the field, he's still getting 9 assists out of that, even though there's a lack of goals across the board.
I was going to say, going down through that list, Campana's return is okay, especially because, as I recall, he had a little bit of a stop-start season, missed some time through injury. That always affects you on the way back, too, because you don't have the form and the fitness and the rhythm and stuff like that. So, I was like, okay, that one's okay. And then I'm like, Chocolate, nah. Feingold, gonna go, no. Turgeman played 3 games. Langoni, no.
Yeah,
Turgeman played 2 games. He had 213 minutes, 3 goals, 1 assist.
Well, and the backup striker on the Revs going into last year was Maxi Urruti, who I believe scored 1 goal. Really was not super effective whatsoever, and really was kind of a last-minute sub. Shankali, they played up top a little bit. It just the offense did not click. They weren't getting the ball into the box, and Carlos Gil really bailed them out of a lot of situations. I think you said 44 goals there, 19 of them Carlos Gil played a direct contribution. And so, yeah, it was an offensively challenged team for sure. And Carlos Gil is really carrying a lot of the weight. And I think the one criticism I'll say around Carlos Gil, it's not even a criticism about him, is that the team is just so reliant on him that, eventually you're not going to be able to have Carlos Gil go out and work miracles with this team. I mean, he's on the wrong side of 30 at this point. And so, at some point there's going to be a decline. And will the Revolution be able to find a way to get their offensive production if he is not Superman anymore? That's a real question, a real struggle. And hopefully that's not something that we got to worry about in 2026. But I think it is on the mind of some Revolution fans.
Hopefully Mitrovic kind of recognizes the unseen side of over-reliance, which is when you have a player like Carlos Gil who so routinely figures out a way to bail you out, sometimes the players around him, they're like, well, he'll figure it out. I'll just give him the ball. It'll be fine. And you don't get guys who are really extending themselves and pushing to also be players who are difference makers. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you see this sometimes when you have great players on teams of not great players, that the other players stop playing up to their potential and they just let their star go and do. And I have sometimes felt that about New England.
New England. Yes. Not Boston yet. I do have one more point though about Campana. Campana before we go away from it, because Scott, you said something there very important, that he did have injuries early in the season. It did seem to wear on him, and a lot of times he'd miss a shot, or he'd very uncharacteristically, like, miss a shot off target, look kind of out of it. So it might have been a mental block. It might have been injuries, but why I'm buying Campana stock and why I think there's a bit of a bounce back here. I just want to read, this is one of my favorite stats about the Revolution from last year. So this is shots on target percentage for Campana in 2022, 46%, in 2023, 45%, in 2024, 48%. So mid to high 40%. He gets, a little less than half of his shots on target. Last year, 32.8%. So that's a real drop off there. So is he hurt? Was he dealing with something mentally? That's just a real drop off. And I think that's going to increase back to the mean. And I think that 7 goals might be 10, 11 this year. Because if he's putting more shots on target, if instead of putting 21 shots on target, he's putting 32 on target or 30, I think we're going to see a couple more goals out of Campana. So I'm buying low on that stock right there.
I'll take a couple more goals from Campana, but if you remember my recap last season, I've watched him. I just don't think he has the goods. He's one of those high, when he gets the ball in a great position, he's going to score a lot of goals, but I don't think relying on him to be the contributor, to be like the magician, I don't think that's really a winning strategy. If you look at his goals per shot, they were at a historic low, but 2 years before in Miami, I think it was like 0.11 goals per shot. His career average is like 0.14 goals per shot. So I do think he gets in that 12, maybe 3 or 4 assists. But the thing, when we talk about the depth charts, we're not sure how often he's going to be on the field. I don't think he's a pencil in everyday starter.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the formation too. That might depend on how they're going to play, but yeah, I agree with that there. And I'll just read off the stats to you real quick because I have it pulled up. So in 2022, goals per shot 0.2, he dropped down to 0.13. 2024 0.23, and last year he was 0.11. So a bit of an up and down player. You're right. If you're going off of that metric, maybe this is the type of player he is. Truthfully, I don't think a lot of people are super high on him. I don't think he's going to be, making all-star games or he's going to be a $10 million player anytime soon. But if he gets his minutes, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a bounce back.
He's a Joveljic from Galaxy from like 2 years ago. There's a huge need for that type of player.
Yeah,
I don't mean that in a negative way at all.
The year before they won their title, Joveljic was just like that. He was in front of goal a lot, very wasteful.
Yeah.
And then he lit it up for a year.
Yeah.
He actually did pretty well in Kansas City, must be said, but we're not here to talk about that.
We are here to talk about the players out and in. Brandon Bailly and Ignatius Ganat. That is called a pro transition, Scott. You can tell I've done this before. Wyatt Holmesburg retired. Thomas Chancellay to Minnesota. Santiago Suarez to San Antonio FC. Are any of those players going to be missed on this roster?
I think Brandon Bailly will be missed, although last year Ilya Feingold had replaced him. Bailly was basically relegated to a backup, and truth be told, I think Brandon Bailly is too good to be a backup in MLS. He should be, at the very least, a squad player who's going to be rotating in and out. And for the Revolution, they had clearly transitioned to Feingold, who they're using U22 spot on. So what was frustrating about Bailly was that, on our show, we had been saying for a year plus, his contract's up. They're not going to extend him, move him, find a team that's going to be taking him, get some sort of asset for him. And even in a year that's a down year, they don't move on from Bailly. They keep him all year. They basically waste him on the bench. So Brandon Bailly will be missed, but essentially he's been replaced. So I don't think that's a major loss for the Revolution. Ganago, there's a bit of a need at wing, but there wasn't not a lot of people were super impressed. You saw the numbers. That was a loan. If they'd purchased him, I think that would have been a designated player or a high TAM player. So Ganago is not worth the cost of that. Almsberg, a backup center back. Chancellay, I actually really like that acquisition for Minnesota. I think the way it's worked out is that Chancellay is not a designated player, and he's apparently getting his green card too. So I think Chancellay might actually be a pretty decent value play for Minnesota. I'm a Thomas Chancellay believer, but he's been here 3 years. He was on designated player tag. And he apparently had run-ins with Caleb Porter. It's probably good just to have a fresh start on both sides. And then Santiago Suarez is a backup right back center back, who I don't think has a role in this team with Ethan Kohler now in. So he's going off to USL another year. It'll be interesting to see if he ever gets a chance to make the leap to the first team. He was a guy that I believe when we signed him, he had experience with the U17s in the US. He was signed from Sacramento Republic. There was a lot of talk about him being kind of a young developmental player along the back line, but he's been relegated to USL Championship the last few years, and I'm not sure we'll ever see him. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on, but I think he's going to be kind of in development forever until his contract's up.
All right. Well, let's turn the page. Look at some players coming in. Right off the bat, Brooklyn Reigns coming from Houston, Ethan Kohler coming from Werder Bremen, Cristiano Oliveira, and then Griffin Yao. Tell us, I mean, a little bit about maybe each of these players, but who excites you the most? Who feels the biggest, need for this team?
Well, I'll tell you one common thing outside of Oliveira, who is a promotion from the Revolution Academy. The other common thread those three players have is they've played under Marko Mitrovic at the international level. They're all Americans, so they're not on green cards. They're all young players. Brooklyn Reigns, I believe, is a U22 player for the Revolution. But Kohler had a small transfer fee, and he was not being used with Werder Bremen. So the Revs got him kind of on a cheap transfer. And Griffin Yao, who he was in a bit of an odd scenario. We got him for about a $400K. But his contract was up in 6 months. A ton of teams were after him. From the reporting over there, it seemed like he was on his way out and he wasn't going to re-sign, and the Revs were able to get him at a pretty solid discount too. So Kohler and Yao, not TAM players, but they're going to fill roles in this team. They're short on wingers, so I think Yao is going to fill a really strong need for the Revolution. I'm not sure how effective he'll be. A lot of this depends on the formation, which I know we'll talk about, but Brooklyn Reigns too. Everything I've heard out of Houston has been positive about him. I've looked at the numbers, and he's a bit short on progressive passes. It doesn't seem like he adds a ton on the offensive side of the ball. And if you're a Soccer Wise listener, you may have heard David Goss say he's not really excited about Reigns, and that his time in the international level might not translate over to the professional side of things. But from everything I've heard, he's a great young player, and I think connecting him back with his old coach and Mitrovic can only be a positive. So it'll be interesting to see how they fit in. But I have the highest of hopes for Brooklyn Reigns, just because everyone talks so nicely about him. So I'm really excited to see him play.
Looking at this formation that we have, and now we have to make a depth chart. It's part of the show. Is what we do. We're not really sure what formation they're going to be playing, but what we thought was, if you have Langoni, he's a pure winger. He needs to be on the wing. Griffin Yao was brought in as a winger. If they're going to be starting, you need to have a formation with two wingers. We have kind of a 4-3-3 attacking here with the number 10, Carles Hill. But with Campana and Turgeman, this could very easily be like a 4-4-2 diamond kind of thing, a 4-1-2-1-2, something like that. So this is just for the show's purposes. We got to talk about the team as it is now. But if you see Langoni moving out, something like that, you can say, okay, maybe we're going to scrap the wing play and go two-man up top. So this is what we have for now. Let's talk about this attacking trident: Yao, Turgeman, and Langoni as our projected starters.
Yeah, well, Turgeman, who I don't think we've talked about a ton, he only played a few games with the Revolution, but completely electric, really fast, really good with the ball in space, really great striking the counterattacks. Very small sample size, but seems like the type of player that the Revolution want to build around. And even before we acquired him in the summer last year, the Revolution were tied to him before the season. So one way or another, Turgeman is in this lineup. And the reason why we're, I know we talked about this a little beforehand. I don't really know what the formation is going to look like. All signs talk to them playing a 4-3-3. It's unclear about if this is the shape, if it's going to be kind of more of a, we have a pure 6 with two kind of 8s in the midfield and then two wingers. In that case, does Heel drop back more into the midfield? Do you push him out on the wing where you're a little short? Yao and Langoni certainly are going to be, starter level players, but Fry and Peniotu are youth academy players that, might not be starter level. So if you have an injury there, you might be shifting. There might be a 5-man back line with, 2 strikers if you want to get Turgeman and Campana out there. So there's a lot of questions on what the shape is going into the season, how that's going to start. But if you look at that top 3 there, I think it starts with Turgeman. Yao certainly should be an effective player they build around. Langoni was a U22 player they brought in a couple of years ago. He hasn't worked out that great, but very fast. A lot of people hold him in high regards. And the one question is, he has been tied back to South America. Is this another player that was acquired under the prior regime that moves his way out? We'll see where that lands. But for now, that's what that top 3 looks like. And we'll see if they build around Campana instead.
Moving down to the number 10, Carles Hill. We've talked about him enough. We know what he brings to the team. Great distributor, class on the ball. Now, I did compare him to another player earlier. I don't think that's a great one for one comparison, but just class, smooth on the ball. He's an artist out there. We have a question from someone in the chat, Foxy, who's been a longtime viewer, longtime supporter of this channel. Do you see Christian Oliveira getting some game time this season? he looked decent in the final MLS Next Pro games. For me, it's going to be dependent on Carl's Hill. If he's healthy, I think he had more minutes than any other Rev last year, which is wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only the MLS Next Pro games, but I believe Olivier also had a game-winning goal against Rhode Island FC in the Open Cup, which was a bit of a rivalry game up here. I think it was an attended 9 or 10,000 attended game, which you don't see that much for an Open Cup anymore. But Olivier is. I would expect him to see kind of as a rotated piece. I don't know if they're going to play him on the wing at all. Again, there's so many questions regarding this formation and how they're going to line up. But there's another hint that I think that they hold Olivier in high regards is that there was a former Academy Player of the Year, Olger Escobar, the Revolution traded to Montreal for not very much. And Olger Escobar had a good Gold Cup. He made a bit of an impression with Montreal, actually came down and scored against the Revolution as well. I think maybe because they hold Olivier in such high regard, they felt Escobar was a little more expendable. So I certainly think they're high on him, but it might be a little too early to make the jump. It seems like the Revolution Academy to the first team pipeline is a little bit broken. But this is a year that I think they are putting an emphasis on youth. As we mentioned, the players they brought in, all guys under 25, all guys that Mitrovic have worked before, and the promotion of Olivier certainly seems to be hinting that the Revolution are also putting one eye on the future. So if some minutes help him develop, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some late game subs and get a chance to make an impression.
I just clocked that he only turns 18 in like March. So honestly, great. Like if your 18-year-old like academy product can come in and close out some games and give you some hard running and stuff like that, like that's awesome.
Yeah. Well,
does he have anyone to learn from? Oh, put him on the depth chart behind Carl's Hill.
No, nobody to learn from.
Well, we I got to say too, before we get too long, we haven't talked about Peyton Miller yet. He might be older than Peyton Miller, who I believe is 17, 18. And that's a big question too with the Revolution. Maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but one thing that's, the rumors are swirling about Peyton Miller. Apparently there's been an 8-digit transfer offer for Peyton Miller to go over to a Premier League team this past offseason. And, it's going to be interesting to see how much of a leap he makes this year, because Peyton Miller, quick player, good player, but I don't think people around MLS see him as a world beater or an all-star level player. But there's a lot of expectation that if he's with the Revolution, he's got to make a jump this year because teams are watching him. So it's going to be a big year for him, for his personal development and for the Revolution as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's keep moving down this depth chart. Let's just keep that going. Talk us through these two defensive center mids, I guess. Is it a double pivot? Is it like a 6'8"? What is that?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. I wish I had more. Great. I wish I could give you a full I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that there's a really big clutter in the midfield, because Youssef is a very solid player who can be a 6 or an 8. Reigns, I'm curious to see how he fits in, and from everything I've been told, he's also kind of an 8. Polster was a starter last year. He seems to be getting older and moving out. And then Jackson Ewell came over from San Jose, didn't work out. And then also on top of that, there's Alan Oyerwath, who is a young player from Uganda that the Revolution signed last year and got some time a little bit last year. He's getting some appearances with the Uganda national team as well. He's kind of more of a 6, kind of an anchor defensive midfielder. So yeah, I would love to give you the full breakdown of what our midfield is going to look like. And I think I when I sent over my show notes, I'm taking a stab at it. That's what I think Reigns they're going to be investing in for sure. He's going to be starting, no doubt. Youssef is kind of the default starter. So I think those two are going to be working in tandem there. Maybe because there's not so much depth on the wing. Maybe if Langoni struggles, you move Heel out to the right and he plays kind of on the right wing, which he did before. He's done before. Under Bruce Arena in the first few years he was here, and maybe you see an Alan Oyerwath, or you see Matt Polster kind of come in as a 6. There's a big cluster, and I'm really curious to see how Marko Mitrovic manages it. So yeah.
Did Jackson Ewell play with Mitrovic? Did Jackson Ewell's time overlap with Mitrovic?
No, I don't believe so.
he's one of those players that just like he was a prospect for so long. Now I looked it up. He's like a 30-year-old grown man.
Yes.
So like something that did not happen in front of my eyes.
Yeah, I believe Jackson Ewell was in the Rookie of the Year voting with Nick Lima. And the only reason I know that is because I think they were both with San Jose in that season. But the only reason I remember that was because Jackson Ewell came from San Jose to New England last year, and Nick Lima went from New England to San Jose. And someone pointed out that we're swapping 2018 Rookie of the Year candidates. I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly, that's how it went. But Nick Lima just retired, so Jackson Ewell's their spring chipping. Yeah,
that's incredible. That's incredible.
No.
I still think of him as some like 20-year-old prospect. I was gonna say though, we have definitely seen the dual 8 thing as a double pivot work in this league. And if you don't have the wingers, having 2 highly mobile 8s really who can cover the ground in front of your back line totally works. A big part of that, of course, is how the defense sets up. Do the wing backs get up and back? What are the center backs like? What can you tell us about that group?
Yeah, I think team is actually set up pretty well for having some wing backs that can get forward. Feingold was very strong offensively. Peyton Miller is very quick. Although there were some times Will Sands had to sub in for him due to injuries, and Will Sands is not as effective of an offensive player as Peyton Miller. So yeah, I think we're going to see a double pivot, as you said. I think we're going to see some wing backs getting up in the run of play. And it's really going to come down to, I think, if those wingers are effective, because if Langoni and Yao aren't super great, I certainly could see them moving to more of a 5-3-2 formation. But yeah, I think we're going to be seeing wing backs get up and involved in the offense a lot.
All right, and then talk to us about the center back situation. We've got Fofana and Ceballos as the projected starters right now. Is that what you see?
Yeah, absolutely. Both those guys are TAM players, internationals that the Revolution acquired last year as kind of their big, shopping spree. Both of them had pretty solid years. Fofana, I'm not sure if, dollar for dollar, pound for pound, you're getting a ton of value for him as a high TAM player. He might be kind of an average to a slightly above average center back in Major League Soccer. I believe he went over and played in the African Cup of Nations with Mali and made a bit of a mistake and got benched. So he's not having a great offseason so much. Brian Ceballos is a very promising player. I believe he's 25 this year. He had some offers apparently from Argentina this year, and the Revolution did their best to hold on to him. Apparently rumors are that Marko Mitrovic has another center back target that he's looking at. But right now they seem pretty committed with Fofana and Ceballos, with those guys being in year 2 of a TAM contract. Behind him too, we have Tanner Beeson, who did a fine job filling in when he needed last year as a third center back. Every San Jose Earthquake fan, gave me the impression Tanner Beeson was the worst player I've ever seen, and he did perfectly fine with the Revs. He did fine. He actually got a couple of spots where they moved him over to left back or right back if they needed him to. So, and then Ethan Kohler, who the Revolution acquired this year, seems like he's going to be the backup right back / center back depth for the Revolution. It seems like they've emphasized his flexibility as well. So he strikes me as a guy that is going to be a depth player, but if the Revs move to a 5-man backline, I think Ethan Kohler is the favorite to find his way into the starting lineup.
That was going to be my question. If we go to the 5.
Yeah. And I also got to give a shout out to the team dad, Andrew Farrell, who everyone thought was retiring, and everyone brought their thank you, Andrew Farrell signs at the end of last year. And then a month later, they said he was coming back for this season. So welcome back, Andrew Farrell. We're excited to have you back. Not sure how he fits on this team, but he is still there. So shout out to
keep the signs.
Love Andrew Farrell playing against him. It was like, who's our fastest player? Andrew Farrell's in the starting lineup. Let's go.
The 2013 number 1 overall super draft pick, Andrew Farrell, still going in 2026.
He had a very, very good career. Very good. Yep. Solid. Never an all. Well, I don't want to say never an all-star. I don't really know those numbers. But never someone blowing you off the page, but he did have a nice, respectable, solid career.
I believe he's like 500 minutes away from 30,000 minutes. And he'd be, I think, besides Diego Chara, the second player in MLS history to play 30,000 minutes, an outfield player to play 30,000 minutes with one team. I looked up that stat a season ago, I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think they're going to find 500 minutes of playing time for him, but the dream is alive.
The dream is alive. Honestly, if you guys aren't in like the hunt for the supporter shield or something, Mitrovic should just do it.
Yeah.
Give him a run of games and just be like, hey man.
The perfect time was last year, and they got him in late games and he looked okay, but he was getting 10 minutes here and there. So he's going to have to play another, 20 seasons or so if he's going to be a late game sub when the Revs aren't making the team. But you know what? At this point, if you told me Andrew Farrell played until he was 65, I would believe you.
What a guy. All right, let's take the goalie then. Matt Turner, the starter. Tell us, how do you feel about Matt Turner being on the team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously great to see Matt Turner, Revolution player before he made his way over to Arsenal in the Premier League. One of the greatest things to ever happen to the Revolution, undrafted free agent out of Fairfield University, turned around to an MLS goalkeeper of the year. So I think it's great to have Matt Turner back. A lot of people feel, myself included, that a max TAM level player on spending that amount of money on a goalkeeper might not be a great allocation of resources. With that said, I think there's a lot of benefit mutually between the team and the player. I think Matt Turner got tired of being kicked around in Europe and needed a place to get some minutes and some starts ahead of the World Cup to earn a spot on the United States for this upcoming World Cup. So I think it benefits him very well. And for the Revolution, they structured the contract in a way where he was a designated player in 2025 when essentially they didn't need the spot, and he's been reduced down to a TAM level player, or at least that's what the team says. He's still technically a designated player because they haven't signed one, but he is effectively a TAM player if they find another designated player. So it's an interesting contract. It's an interesting situation. He's on loan through the summer. So if they exercise the purchase option, I believe he's going to be a designated player. He might not be, but it's an interesting situation where the Revs could be flying throughout the year. Matt Turner could be regaining his form, and then there could be interest for him throughout Europe. And, do the Revs exercise the purchase option and commit a lot of resources to a goalkeeper? Do they buy him and spin him? Do they, if he falls off, completely, does he go back to Lyon? Do they try to work out a loan for the last 6 months? So there's a lot of question marks regarding, what's going to happen to Turner the second half of the season. And then behind him is Donovan Parisen, who was the third string goalkeeper last year. He was a super draft pick. Alex Bono just got traded back to DC United. I think that was just announced yesterday. So there isn't really a backup goalkeeper too. So I would expect the Revs to either acquire another goalkeeper throughout MLS at some point throughout the season to back up Matt Turner and essentially take over in the summer, or they just have a lot of faith in Parisian. So it's interesting. But for now, going into the season, I think Revolution fans are in safe hands with Matt Turner.
Let's go through some questions here. Which player outside of our current projected starting 11 has the best chance at winning a starting job?
I think Ethan Kohler, for reasons already mentioned. I think that if a formation change happens, I think we're going to be seeing him. I think if one of the starting center backs gets hurt, I think we'll be seeing him. I think if Ilya Feingold gets hurt, I think we'll be seeing him. I think Ethan Kohler has a very good chance of getting 12 to 15 starts at some point this year, just from being versatile and being a guy that Mitrovic has seen play before, and I think wants to get some minutes. The other person I'll mention is Alan Alyerwath, who again is in that clutter of the midfield. His path is not as clear, but if the Revs go to kind of a 4-1-2-2 or a 1-2-2 midfield with a pure sixth and then two midfielders in front of him, he might be playing the six a little bit. So again, it kind of depends on which youth players they want to develop, which ones they want to build, and all signs point to this being a bit of a rebuild year. So I absolutely think Mitrovic is going to be giving some minutes to the guys he has, the young players he has a lot of faith in. And so I think Kohler is definitely in that category, and I wouldn't be surprised if Alyerwath is in there too.
And what are some, like, the question here is, what are realistic team expectations? I want to break this into two questions. One, what's a realistic expectation for where this team finishes in the year, table position, results, that kind of thing. The second part of that question is like, what's a realistic expectation for what Marko Mitrovic will do with this group? Do you expect him to be like a more of a development coach because that's kind of his history that we've seen? Do you expect him to be like, yeah, okay, I can develop players, but really I'm a coach that brings like on-field winning success? Like, we're a big market, we need to be title contenders kind of coach. Like, what do you expect for him in his tenure?
Yeah. Well, in terms of standings, I'll go there first because I think it's quick. I mean, this is realistically, we're looking at maybe a bottom of the playoff type team. It seems like a bit of a rebuild this year. They're getting younger. They're kind of using their resources a little bit more conservatively. And, you've missed the playoffs the last couple of years. You've missed the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years. It seems like year one of a new era, kind of, I don't want to call it a rebuild completely because they didn't tear it down to the studs, but they're focusing on getting younger. So this is year one of kind of a new page, new era. And I think teams will, fans will have to be a little bit patient with this Revolution team because we might see the players, we might see the personnel, we might see the formations change, as Mitrovic gets, his feet wet in MLS. He's never been a head coach in this league before too. So I don't have sky high expectations. And I think realistically, if things go well, they'll be a 5 to 6 seed in the East. In terms of his style, in terms of, I think he is going to be a bit of a development coach. I think there's going to be a lot of young players on this team between the guys he's brought in. And then you have guys like Jack Beniotu, who has been loaned down to USL Championship for a number of years, and he needs to make the next step. And if not, it's time for him to probably move on. Malcolm Fry is another guy that the Revolution have had on the contract for 3 years. He's never gotten really any playing time as well. You look across the team, it's full of guys in their early to mid 20s who all seem to be looking to make the next step. So I think this is going to be kind of a learning year for a lot of players and for Marko Mitrovic. And I think by the end of the year, there'll be a clearer picture of which younger guys are going to be building blocks for 2027 and which of them are guys that need to find a new home. And, on top of that too, just looking at some young pieces that, have had roles, Ceballos, Langoni, and before that, Thomas Shankalai left, as we mentioned. Those were all contributors or guys who got significant minutes, and they're still tied to other teams. So it seems like the Revolution are picking up all phone calls, and if a Brian Ceballos, who's a perfectly good player, very effective player, and a young, promising player, if they're answering phone calls for him, it seems like they're answering phone calls for just about everyone. So it'll be interesting to see where this team ends at the end of the year, but it certainly seems like a development year for sure.
I love it.
It does seem like a big statement of intent that you have guys like Brooklyn Reigns coming in who are young players and into positions where there isn't a lot of depth. So it's like this kid is going to have to play.
Yep.
Jackson Ewell is probably not going to eat up every single minute of this season, even if he under Mitrovic has some sort of renaissance season. The young kids are going to have to show up. So I guess there's a big statement of intent there. But Bob's about to ask you about storylines.
I just want to touch on one thing first.
And he's not.
You're getting a new stadium, hopefully, right?
Yes.
3 to 4 years. Carlos Hill will not be playing in that new stadium, most likely. For me, when you talk about development and stuff like that, like the year you put a new stadium out is the year you want new fans. Like you need to find a guy whose jersey, who's going to be on the back of the jerseys for the inaugural stadium. Who's going to have the banner, falling down from the new stadium. I think of all these things. Like maybe you're not necessarily yet at a fork in the road, but you're going to be there real soon.
Yeah, Bob, we talked about this. Carlos Hill won't be playing when the Revs open a stadium. You know who will be? Andrew Farrell. Andrew Farrell will be breaking his 30,000 minute mark in that new stadium in Everett. It's going to be great. No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because this has been going on for so long. The stadium was supposed to be here kind of in conjunction with the 2026 World Cup. And now they're talking about it being here for the 2030 World Cup. That just shows you how many delays. And we've been waiting for it 20 years, but Everett specifically, just been setback after setback. And now there's a bit of a clear path, but the stadium might be a little too far away to think of that team because from what I hear, it's 4 to 5 years out, but you're absolutely right. The Revs really are at kind of an inflection point where Carlos Hill is going to be gone soon. He's not going to be playing for the team in 4 to 5 years. So you need some new stars. And I agree. I'll agree with everything you said there. You said it so well. They really need to find some depth, not only for the end of Carlos Hill's career, but they're going to need to find some game changers when he's gone and when he's ineffective.
Sorry, the graphics won't push your box up, so I covered your face there for a second. Comment says Revolution really need to focus on improving their home form. Wasn't great that last year. Was it 4 wins, 4, and 9? Yeah. Is that one of the storylines we can follow? My last question here is, what are some storylines we follow throughout the season? Most of our viewers follow their home MLS team and maybe catch everyone else a couple times through the season. Someone who may not have their finger on the pulse of Major League Soccer, they turn on the TV to catch a Revs game. What should they be looking out for? What's a storyline to follow?
Well, that question too, by the way, perfectly set up, because when Caleb Porter was fired, there's some questions in the press conferences. What does a coach have to do? What does your next coach have to do? And Kurt Adolfo said he has to win at home. So that was actually one thing that Kurt Adolfo stressed that Caleb Porter failed at, which was winning at home, not getting your points at home. It's supposed to be Fortress Foxborough, and even in down years, the Revolution got results at home, and they were really pitiful at home last year. So spot on with the comment. But in terms of storylines, Peyton Miller, I think, is probably the biggest question mark right now going into the season. At some point, someone's going to make a bid to the Revolution. It's going to be a Georgi Petrovic situation where you can't say no to $12 million or $15 million or however big those numbers get. Someone's going to come in and make an offer on Peyton Miller that the team can't refuse. And then what happens from there? So, and also to the player, if he has national team aspirations, you don't want to hold him back. So Peyton Miller will be going at some point. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes and when he goes. And I think that's a big storyline that even if you're not a Revolution fan, if you're a United States men's national team fan, that's something you should be paying attention to. On that same line, kind of a different story, but also national team implications. Matt Turner, does he return to his goalkeeper of the year form? If you look at the advanced stats, if you look at the expected goals against metrics last year, Matt Turner played really well, and the Revolution are going to need him to return to that form. Matt Turner needs to return to that form. Is he able to make a push for the World Cup this summer? And then what do the Revs do when they do get to the summer? And then other thing too, that I don't think anyone in the world but me is talking about, but I'm going to ring it heavily. Carlos Gil's got 2 years left of his contract. One is a guaranteed contract year. One is a team option. And then I think 2027, isn't that the split season? So they're going to do a half season and then the second half. So what are you doing with Carlos Gil? What are you doing with his contract? Are you extending him? He's a bit old to be extending. Are you going to be dropping the bag for him? And, does Carlos Gil turn around and say, I'm tired of losing here. You're in a rebuild. You're bringing in young players. I want to go to a team that is going to win. I want to win now. I'm tired of watching all these other teams stack up, and I'm tired of, having to pass to Leo Campagna. I want to go to a good team. Carlos Gil might say that. So I don't think that's something that people are worried about right now. But mid-season, if the Revolution are in 13th, 14th place, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these teams, one of the contenders in MLS, makes a big cash for offer to Carlos Gil making an MLS Cup push.
Next few are some quick Q&As. What style do you think that Revolutions are going to match up well against this season?
I think the Revolution's strength is going to be speed. We mentioned the wingbacks, Ilya Feingold, Peyton Miller, great wingbacks, both dangerous in attack. Feingold especially, I think, had a big step forward. He really hit the ground running for a U22 player, only 21 years old. So both those guys might be more dangerous this year. Langoni hasn't been super effective, but he's still fast. You remember those Bruce Arena team. Oh, and Dort Turgeman, phenomenal on the counterattack from what we've seen so far. He loves the ball in open space. He's very dangerous in open space. So, we remember those Bruce Arena teams, which was win the ball and go fast, go direct. I think this is going to be a team that's going to work the ball up the wings quickly, and they're going to try to score a lot of goals on the counterattack. I think a lot of teams on paper are going to match up a little bit better for them. So I would expect the Revs to be quite dangerous on the counter here.
Love it. So we're going to be targeting them against teams maybe a little slower or a little weak on the wings, teams that play too narrow.
Turnovers. Yeah, absolutely.
Which styles will this team match up poorly against?
Yeah. I mean, there are a bit of weaknesses. A lot of teams are going to line up favorably against the Revolution. I think that their midfield is going to be interesting to see how they line up. And again, I think a lot of that is due to the question marks to how this formation goes. Do they play with a double pivot? Do they play with an anchor number 6? I think overall, this is going to be a young team. This is going to be an inexperienced team. So I think there's going to be a lot of experienced teams, a lot of teams with better composure. And I think they're if you look at the past 2 years, the Revolution have really struggled when they've played with a 4-man backline, even though Ceballos is quite a decent player and the wingbacks are able to get up in the attack. Defensively, they're a little weak around the outside back position as well. So I'm curious to see if the Revolution set up a little bit more defensively and their defensive midfielders hold back a little bit more. If not, I could see them being exposed really, really badly against strong offensive teams that really work the ball around in possession quite well.
All right. What player do you think improves the most in 2026?
Campana, I think, is kind of the player that, we might be talking next year about how he doubled his goal total. So I'm going to kind of throw my hat in the ring for him. But again, is he a starter? Is he going to start 30 games? I'm not quite sure about that. So I'm curious about that one. I think Peyton Miller had a bit of a decent season last year. I think we see him make a really, really strong leap this year. Then I think Griffin Yao is going to get a ton of chances. I don't know, that might be cheating since he wasn't on the Revolution last year. But Griffin Yao, I think, is a guy that is coming over to MLS to play right away. He's talked about making the World Cup team as well, which I don't think that's happening, but he certainly wants to improve his profile and make a leap. And he had the attention of a lot of teams in Europe and in MLS. Apparently DC United made a bid for him last summer, and so he chose the Revolution. So he's here to make an impact, and I expect to see him hit the ground running as well.
Honestly, good on him for saying what he wants. His career to be.
Hey, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you're still in the stars.
Great motivational poster.
Hang in there. Speaking of hang in there, which player, tough season, regresses in 2026?
Part of this is because he's got a bit of a competition for his position, but Matt Polster he's in a bit of decline. He's not the player he was 3-4 years ago when he was the bulldog of that Revolution Supporter Shield winning team. They brought in Brooklyn Reigns. There's also some younger players that are gunning for his spot. So I expect Matt Polster to regress in the sense that he's going to have more of a limited role for the team. They did sign him to an extension last year when he won his job back from Jackson Ewell. But still, I think he's a bit of a part-time player. Outside of that, wasn't thrilled with Fofana. He's an okay player, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Revolution try to shop him mid-season if they're trying to bring in another center back. It seems like if the center back position needs improving, Fofana is going to be on a bit of a short leash there. Those are my two ones to look out for. But again, those might just be because they're more so losing their job as opposed to their form drops off a cliff.
Love it. Scott, anything final?
I do have a final thought, actually. We were talking about, a few years down the road, obviously the end of Carlos Hill's time in New England. And I was just, reminded of another kind of aging player who I would have thought his career would have ended just down the road. Maxi Morales, 38 years young in NYCFC, playing 3,100 minutes.
I thought you were going to say Andrew Farrell.
40 years young, Andrew Farrell. No, just kind of a similar position, I guess. I think it just depends on whether Carlos Hill at the end of this contract is willing to sort of accept the circumstance of age coming for everybody, and be willing to kind of play ball with the team and not necessarily occupy like a DP spot.
Mm-hmm. Be willing to transfer to New York City.
Well, you bring up a really good point that this is the time that the Revolution need to work on a contract with Carlos Hill, because they're in a bit of an odd spot. They could, in theory, just extend the next year and roll their dice. But if he has another all-star season and is phenomenal, you go into next year with not a lot of leverage on Carlos Hill. He's a bit older, but someone's going to pay him. I mean, the price tags around MLS are getting higher and higher and higher. And if you're the Revolution, I mean, not a lot has gone your way this past 5 years. Since winning the Supporter Shield, literally nothing has gone your way. So there's if I was the Revolution front office, I would make sure there's no way I'm losing Carlos Hill. And I think those contract talks should be happening now because, could you structure a deal where he gets a raise this year, next year, or maybe just this year, you give him a huge spike in pay, and then year 3, year 4, that DP tag comes off. If you front load that salary and you can drop him down to $1 million salary in 2028, 2029, that designated player tag comes off. and then you have a lot more roster flexibility, and you keep Carlos Gil. So I hope those are things that the front office is thinking about right now, because no one except our show is talking about Carlos Gil's contract status right now. But 2 years out, he's the team right now, or at least last year he was the team, and these are conversations that they need to start having.
He's been so loyal to the club through so many years, and he's been quietly great when he could have gone somewhere else and gotten a lot more accolade. It feels like New England would be doing a huge disservice if they did not find a way to keep him there, to the point of him retiring, actually.
Yeah,
like for as long as he wants to play, if he can play at an MLS level and contribute in some way and whatever, like it feels like New England need to keep him there.
Yeah, I agree. And but you look at Miami offering $13 million for Bouanga. If there's a team that wants to get bold that they need a playmaker, are they offering 8 to 10 for the Revolution for Gil? And like, if you're the Revs, you have to kind of think about it. If you're Gil and you get that, suddenly maybe going to a contender is really interesting. And none of these things need to happen if the Revolution lock him down now. So I think that's hopefully something that they're talking about right now, but we'll see.
If all else goes wrong, you have a center back who can give you those rehab after a hip replacement type, advice.
Yes, absolutely. You know what? They sell Carlos Gil for $15 million, and then they turn around and they extend Andrew Farrell for a 15-year, $15 million deal. I think that would win the fans right back.
Love it. Okay, thank you, Greg Johnstone from Revolution Recap. Let us know one more time where we can find your work.
Yeah, you can follow us on any podcast platform. We do post-game shows after every game, and then, of course, off-season content as well. So just search Revolution Recap on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you go. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, every social media network, but really Twitter and Instagram is where you'll find us most active, and that's just Revolution Recap.
Thank you and good night.